So my name is Dolkenet, that's my monk name, and I will have to give you some words, some short introduction about my Zen and meditation practice. So a while ago I found myself deep down, somewhere in the dark, and from that position it was evident that I cannot really do anything by myself. I cannot solve the problem by myself. And I started to look around, to the left, to the right, what to do, how to do, and of course sooner or later I met Buddhism as well. So I went to the next bookstore, bought several books about Buddhism, read them carefully, and then after a while I felt that I know everything about Buddhism, and I waited for my life to become better, but I actually had to realize that it did not really change. So after a while, still looking for some nicer solution, I just got a thin book in my hand. It was a work of a Hungarian monk who was that time in Japan. It was a book of Kongans. Probably during the Dharma talk we will hear about the Kongan practice as well, and these tiny stories which really trick the mind, like completely, bonded me. So I just could not do anything with that. I was totally like shocked that I have to face some small stories, some small questions, and I cannot really do anything with them. Then I felt like this Zen, and in general in this Buddhism and meditation is something that's worth working with. And immediately tried to look around several places, like on the internet, like posters, like culture houses, whatever, looking for some possibilities to practice and pick up to find some good teacher and school. And after a while, I met this Quantum School of Zen teaching, and there was only one short retreat which I took part in. And on the way back on the train, I realized that for me, there's no other solution. I kind of have to become a monk because I felt too unstable and too lost to keep myself in a condition that I would carry on Zen practice or any kind of meditation every day in the morning, every other day, but like in some order time. And also, I wanted to, just as we say in Hungary, maybe the rough translation will be fine, to jump into the deep water. So once you jump into the deep water, you completely forget about the shore, about the boat, or wherever you jumped from. You are just in the water and try to find yourself, try to get some air, and try to find the true way and direction. So, without any hesitation, I went for the next retreat, met my teacher, and we agreed that, yes, it's a possible solution to be a monk. Actually, he was the first Buddhist monk I met in my life. But actually, it took no time to decide. I didn't really think about whether to be, whether not to be. I just jumped into the middle. And after a few years, I found myself deep in the Hungarian forest, like building a temple, and do practice every day, twice, 3 times, sometimes shorter retreats. And the thing I shortly realized that my whole conception of life and thinking and mind totally changed, and something started to work inside me, which I thought I would be unable to do, but actually it happened. And this great feeling, which I never had before in my life, gave me quite a lot of motivation and energy. So as a monk, I do my everyday practice, wake up in the morning, work during daytime. Of course, we have the formal meal together, then in the afternoon work again, in the evening practice again, and when we have shorter or longer retreats, then we practice all day long. Now this is a lifestyle for myself, which I really don't want to get rid of, so I would not really change with anybody. And this practice itself, so when I met first with the Buddhism, I thought this practice, like sitting down in meditation posture, nicely crossing my legs, fixing the mind on something, it will be like a great and funny and movie-like experience, which was of course true for the first few minutes, and for the first few hours. But after that, it became like quite solid, constant, nothing. And this it's really hard to explain, but this nothing, which later became peace, truly helped me. So whenever I think about my previous life, I see my failures. Now I understand why did I do that, and also see the possible solutions in that time. How should I have acted in a different way? And I think it just gave me a better understanding to myself. So still, I'm on the first. I did only the first few steps on my way, but I would like to encourage everybody to actually not to only read about Buddhism and to study that, but actually sit down, do some meditation practice regularly, every time, from one day to another, again and again and again, and to encourage everybody to have this practice, cultivate this practice, and understand yourself better. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. As you heard from Dr. Sunim, meditation can become your lifestyle. But let me hasten to add that meditation does not mean a hairstyle or a fashion. It's very important. What is then meditation? There are as many definitions as stars in the sky or snowflakes in a strong Estonian winter. But what you need to know is the practical value of meditation, which is clear mind. So clear mind is meditation. All your attempts to attain some sort of clarity, collectedness, concentration is meditation. Why do we need that? We have this interesting concept of mind in our heads. And sometimes we feel that our being, our whole being as humans, just does not operate in the way we want to. And we have an instinct to come back to the starting point where everything begins. And it's one of the greatest teachings of the Buddha that if you want to understand the nature of this world, then perceive it as created by mind alone. So it seems essential that we discover what this mind is. And once we have found it, we would use it to the best of our abilities. If we do not, then our lives get cluttered up or sliced up by our own dualistic views, should they be desire type or anger type of views. But if we entertain a dualistic mind as the foundation, then our world will always be shattered into good and bad, right and wrong, life and death, etc., etc. Another great finding of the Buddhas and the patriarchs was that we do not have to live like this. We do not have to have a mind which always splits everything into two. I like, I don't like. I want, I don't want. It's me and it's not me. So, if you want to attain a mind which is beyond dualities or beyond opposites, you can do that, but for that you have to make some effort. And this effort is meditation. Let me quickly describe how this works in a larger context. Everybody here is listening to the Institute's lecture for weeks or months or even years. And I'm very happy to be here in the 10th year of the existence of this place. And that's when I have to thank all those who are contributing to the existence and activity of this place. Because this is also a place where we share the Dharma. And that's how we do it tonight. Let's draw in our minds a big circle. And this circle has 5 distinct points. At the very bottom, there is 0 degrees. And as you go on, 90 degrees, then 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and then 360 degrees, which is exactly at the same point as 0. You could hear in the introductory, Kesuni was in a state where he really didn't know what to do. He really didn't know what to ask of himself and what kind of choices he would really have in life. And when you are not aware of your choices, then you are really poor. Then you really don't know what's the next step that you should take. Furthermore, at 0 degrees, we not only do not have questions, we also do not want questions. We blame the world or another human or other humans for the suffering that we are in. It's usual human projection. At 0 degrees, everybody is at fault. I am right and they are wrong. I'm fine and the world is wrong. The world has a problem. The world is imperfect. The world is full of things I don't want. And what we do not see at 0 degrees is our own situation, our own relationship to the world, and we also do not see what we are doing. We do not see cause and effect. And when we have a crack in this cocoon of I, when we have a crack in our own views, then we start asking questions or accepting questions. Then we want to know, how is this whole thing working? Why do I feel like this? Why do I live like this? So the first deep question we ask is, why? Why? And if you go on and you start your studies, and as he said, you start to read some books, and you venture out on some path of understanding, then you can reach 90 degrees. At 90 degrees, your understanding is complete. That's what most of you have here. You have a full understanding of what this life is about, what the Buddha's teaching says, and don't worry about reading more sutras. Enough is enough. We'll come to that when we talk about cleverness. So at 90 degrees, you understand, in summary, that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. All formations are impermanent, they are imperfect, and they're subject to cause and effect. That means they are interrelated. That means what seemed to be a solid chunk of unalterable reality became a flux of feelings, thoughts, actions, a sequence of past, present, and future actions. So your reality changed. It's not so unalterable or unchangeable anymore. You began to understand the rules. And by that you observed many things. But the 3 hallmarks of existence are already yours: impermanence, imperfection, and interrelatedness. You cannot escape from that realization anymore, although it's just some kind of understanding. So then, after the why, comes the what. What is it that goes beyond impermanence? What is it that goes beyond imperfection? What is it that goes beyond interrelatedness? In other words, is there something that we can truly take refuge in? And that's when you start to practice. At 0, you started to study. At 90, you start to practice. And this practice is leading you towards some experience. At 90 degrees, you have to start some kind of meditation, because without that, you realize you would be roaming in circles, around, reading more, understanding more, never having enough. And if you're clever, you get trapped at 90 degrees. You get trapped in the book round. You get trapped with understanding, which you want to refine more and more and more. and then you never do it. And if you never do it, you never get it. You never attain. So at 90 degrees, when you said enough understanding, I have to do some practice, then you start actual formal meditation. In our Korean tradition, we do not distinguish strictly between sitting, chanting, or bowing. All these three methods, they point to the same direction. Attain your true self. Attain the mind which is beyond opposites. Attain the mind which is beyond life and death. And if you practice, you can truly attain that. But explanations and books cannot get you there. Even the best teaching and the best teacher can only point to the way. But you cannot substitute your experience with anything and with anyone. So at 180 degrees, there is no form, no emptiness, only this point. When you hear this sound, there's no thinking in your mind. There's no enlightenment, there's no suffering, there's no high, no low, no good, no bad. Only that cuts off everything that you thought of, that cuts off past, present, and future. That moment when you had no I, you and this world became one. Even if that experience was for a fraction of a second. What we practice for is that you don't depend on the hit of the stick, you don't depend on the demonstration, that this moment of clarity would be extended and would be fully yours. Because when you attain that, you attain our substance, all sentient beings' substance, all the Buddha's substance, all the world's names and forms substance. No one can give it to you. You already have it. But how much are you aware of it? How much can you use it? To what extent is it yours? That's the question. If you practice, it fully becomes yours. If you practice, you do not depend on your ideas, on others' ideas, on previous conditioning, on anger, desire, or ignorance. You don't depend on any of that. And with the attainment of our true self, or this substance which has no name, no form, no life, no death, you can continue your journey. However, there is a dangerous point here too. At 90 degrees, you remember, you can get attached to understanding if you're too clever. But as CASN said in his account of his meditation practice, after a while there is this solid nothing. How solid it is depends on your center, how strong it is, how strong your not moving or not thinking mind is. But if you become attached to emptiness, you cannot act, you cannot speak, and you cannot live after a while. So at 180 degrees, on the top of your realization, there's a dangerous point that you become attached to emptiness, which translates into quiet and translates into happiness later. It can give you that. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra says, all formations are impermanent, they appear and disappear. When both appearing and disappearing are gone, this stillness is bliss. And that's why it's dangerous. You can become attached to it, you can become drunk with stillness, and the silent illumination is just halfway. It's not the full extent of your journey. That's why the great vow is necessary. If you have a great vow to save all beings from suffering, you do continue your journey and start to process your karma, which you haven't processed before. Because finally you have the tool. At 180 degrees, you see what kind of substance all karma is made of, all formations are made of, whether it's inside you or outside of you. Because at 180 degrees, inside, outside, all disappear. So you start to finish your karma. In fact, you start to process your karma first. And at 270 degrees, which says any kind of form, any kind of emptiness, you attain freedom. any kind of form can be reduced to emptiness, and from emptiness any kind of form can be created. It's the area of magic. Now, most of you may think about some rough magic or coarse magic, which is like walking on water, moving objects from a distance, being a psychic, or some kind of David Copperfield. And I'm pretty sure, looking at your faces, that this is not what you are interested in, which is wonderful. This coarse magic is something like a byproduct of somebody's meditation practice, an area which you may see, but you do not dwell in. Also, you may not see it, and you may not explore it, and you can bypass it very safely. We call that the material magic, okay? But the true magic is inside of you. The true magic happens when you see that even the roughest feelings or the smartest thought is not you. It's not your true self. It's not who you truly are. So what you can actually do is that you process and get rid of all your ideas, your views, your likes and dislikes. And that's when your enemies become your friends. If you don't do this, then your friends eventually can become your enemies. And when you transcend all your likes and dislikes, when you transcend all your ideas, then past, present, and future cannot control you anymore. So when you completely finish your karma and you have no absolute views anymore, that's true magic. Nothing and no one can control you anymore because you don't believe dualistic views as absolute. You can see them in their true context. You can see them in their relativity. You see thoughts, feelings, perceptions, impulses, and any form of consciousness for what they truly are. And that's better than external magic, because it transforms you. It doesn't transform a white rabbit into a small bird. Okay? It doesn't make you appear and disappear out of a box, or gets you sliced up with all kinds of tools like saws and swords, etc. That's illusion. And people love illusion, so they believe that. True magic is you get rid of your illusions. And on top of your freedom, at 270 degrees, you move right along and you start to apply it to help this world. And at 360 degrees, this helpful action is fully devoted to others, to help others. So, as we say in our classic teaching, when somebody is hungry, give them food. When people are thirsty, give them drink. And you need all the possible clarity for that. All the possible wisdom and compassion to do that. Because if you look at this world, that's not what we are doing. At best, the slightest mistake means that we give food to thirsty people and drink to hungry people, and it happens all the time. But it's even more common that we choose to ignore the world. We choose to ignore other people. We choose to ignore problems, issues that we believe does not concern us. And what this practice gives you is an experience that substantially we are all one. In our karma and in our physical appearance, we are all different. And that's wonderful. Variety is the key to survival. That's why we are all different in our faces, in our thoughts, in our nationalities, in our language, the food we like and the drink we consume. But substantially, deep down there, or up high at 180, we share the same substance. Our Buddha nature, or our true self, is exactly the same. In human beings, it can become conscious and we can realize it. In other beings, it is not possible. And then you see that in this world, we are truly interrelated. Nobody is out there on a private planet. We share the same planet. We share the same life, the same existence, the same resources. So our mistakes or merits affect us. It's inevitable. And if you are at 360 degrees, you no longer believe that impermanence, imperfection, and interrelatedness are the curses of mankind. In fact, we can use them to wake up. If we were not impermanent, would we have a sense of urgency to do something? No. We would be very comfortable. In fact, too comfortable. If things were perfect, would we strive to improve? No, we would not. We would not see our own imperfections, because everything would be perfect and we would believe that we are too. If we could exist independently as a separate self and not interrelated with other beings, would we have compassion? Probably not. So look at the 3 marks of existence as the 3 teachers, not as the 3 hindrances. And then your meditation practice will bring the right fruition. Why is this so important? If we look back a little bit to the history or the linguistic history as well of the word meditation, it comes from the Sanskrit jhana. Jhana means absorption, or becoming one, or dissolving the I. All of these meanings are there. And you can use a bunch of dictionaries to find out more literal meanings. But the practical meanings are this: absorption, becoming one, and dissolving the I, your ego. When this word went to China, it became Channa, and got a Chinese character, and the NA from the end disappeared. So it became Chan. And the same character got a reading in Korea as Son, and in Japan as Zen. Okay? So when that happened, over the centuries, not just the word changed, the techniques also changed. It merged with a lot of local cultures, like Taoism. So Korean Zen is a conglomerate of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. We use the best of all these. And that helps us become a useful and more clear human being. Whether you sit, stand, walk, talk, or be silent, or awake, or asleep, constantly without interruption, keep the great question: what is this? What is this substance? What is this mind? That's a classic, you know. Again, whether sitting, standing, talking, be silent, awake or asleep, walking or lying down. In all these states, without interruption, never lose the moment, never lose the question. And of course, it doesn't mean that you repeat it like a tape recorder, verbally. Just keep the mind clear and use the question, the sense of the question without words, to return to this moment and not become attached to anything which appears in your consciousness. It doesn't reduce you into something that you don't want to be. Rather, it expands your potential, expands your possibilities to be the human being you really want to be. So, I think this is the time when I could take some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions on either the history, the theory, or the practical application of meditation, feel free to ask. I understand the social tradition here, that people are very polite and sometimes shy and sometimes reserved. And let me warm you up a little bit with the notion that any kind of question is good. You do not have to be a Buddhist, you don't have to be smart, and you don't have to understand everything. Imperfection is not just your property, it's mine too. So, there you go.
What's the best way to start practicing?
The best way to start practicing is asking the right question. What's the most important question on your mind now? Mm-hmm.
Mine is empty right now.
Then there's no question. But it's not really empty. You have some thoughts, you have some motivation, but since it's a an interactive, Dharma talk time right now, it doesn't really come out. But when you're alone, at home, see what is most important. So first, we should ask the question that you really have. That's why I'm not giving you some great question, because you should find what is most important for you now. And if you can answer that, then ask the next most important, and the next, and the next, and then it's organic, clear, natural development. We don't want to impose anything artificial into people's consciousness, because it's artificial. So the teaching has to become yours. And if you ask the right question, the true question, which you really have, then you get to develop, you get to grow. And then the teaching, as you meet it, becomes meaningful for you. So ask the most important question that you can possibly have, and try to find a solution for it. The question, what am I, or what is this, for most of us at this point, is theoretical. You hear it from a teacher, you hear it from a monk. And if you do not really have that question already inside, you don't consider it important. And it's correct that way. So choose the way which you want to choose, but come to the most important question in your life. And if that is deep enough, you and the Dharma connect. The rest is technique. And we can teach technique, but that's secondary, tertiary, way down the line. How you breathe, how you sit, how you look, whether you use a mantra or just perceive sounds, it's all technique. But your inner being has to come to a clear evolution, that you want to evolve spiritually, you want to develop mentally, and that's why the questions are important. And if you ask that very sincerely, if you're really honest with yourself, then you can progress on the path. People can use Oriental practices as well as Western practices to cover themselves up. And you can see it after a while really well. They build a wall out of their practice so that they would look good. They would look holy. They would look something that they want to project onto the world. And after a while, this wall cracks. Because it's not true. It's an illusion. It's a personal projection of an ego that we want to show. And that's why it doesn't work. So really, meditation begins being honest with yourself and sincerely asking the most important question that you can have. And the Buddha started like this. That's why he succeeded. You know? We have this dramatic interaction between him and his cart driver. And he says, you know, Channa, are kings also subject to death? When he finished his first trip outside the palace. And of course the cart driver says, yes, my lord, kings also die. Then I don't want my kingdom. No, thank you. Then he cuts off his hair at the edge of the forest and goes into the ascetic path, because if he's subject to the same laws and he suffers the same fate as his subjects, what's the use? And again, like I said at the beginning, meditation is not about hairstyles. So the Buddha left his society, but you don't have to. Just leave the inside prison into which you locked yourself. That's all you need to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a
More questions?
Yes, I have. How can one prevent a drop of water from ever drying up?
Your daughter will teach you. She knows that. More questions? Yeah, back there, and then over there, the lady. Yeah.
Can you help to explain a story what happened to my friend? At the age of 35, he got very interested about Eastern philosophies and including Buddhism. And just a couple of years later, it happened a real accident with him. A car crashed, and he was like 2 years in bed. He couldn't move at all, and later, step by step, he got back his physical movement and so on. And if I asked him, so what happened, then he explained that I probably got too deep in Eastern philosophies, and 90 degrees or 180 degrees or...
Your question is very interesting. It belongs to the group of friends questions. And the problem is that the friends are never here. So it is very difficult to answer the question because I don't see your friend. I don't see his mind. I cannot ask him a reply question. And what may have happened is that your friend got very distracted. And if you are thinking while you are driving, soon there's a separation of body and mind, and you're not present. You don't see with your eyes. You don't hear with your ears. You don't move with your hands. That means you are subject to an accident, either because you cause it or you suffer it. It doesn't matter which part of the equation you are at, but you are involved. Why? Because you are not present. So what seems to be the case is that your friend used Oriental philosophy in the wrong way. And that means you are always thinking about something while doing something else. And that is the problem. Whether it's Oriental philosophy you are distracting yourself with, or the latest internet news, or your girlfriend, or your family, it doesn't matter. But he got distracted. Body and mind separate, and then you cannot be present, cannot use your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And that's why the accident happened. Zen means become one. Zen means 100% be here and now. And if you practice correctly, then there is no separation. There is no distraction. There is no forced concentration also. But there is this natural, clear presence which is resembling a well-tuned instrument where the strings are not too tight and not too loose, and you can play on it. So that's correct practice, and that's also correct life. Next question.
For it was strange to explain how these different degrees are like layers on top of each other. My experience is that they all participate in my life in certain accents all the time. I can't imagine I stop breathing. I can't imagine I stop practicing. I do what I can helping. But all these circles in various areas of my life spin by their own speed and do their own work. So on one side you talk about this, that everything is one, like this circle, and when you explained how it worked, you explained it like layers.
The layers is your addition, allow me to say. Okay. And the circle is just a teaching device. It doesn't really exist. It doesn't mean that I take away what I have given you. But it's just a kind of conditional reality for our minds to see some progress. So the sixth patriarch said, originally nothing. But if I answer the questions with originally nothing or with the hit of the stick, your mind remains hungry. And you're frustrated, and you're dissatisfied because there is no teaching for you. So in terms of the circle, we have to make a beginning and we have to make an end, although in reality there is no beginning and no end. We have to define some progress, where we start, how we proceed, what's the peak, what's the next, and quote-unquote the final step. Although, as you say, rightfully so, all these are present in our lives all the time. All the time. So we have understanding, and without practice experience we cannot use that correctly. We are transforming our karma already, and we are also helping other beings. But it's important to open up these aspects. It's important to explain it in a succession so that we would have a linear idea how it works. But it's ever present. You know, there's this great story with Zen master Dongsan. He was a Diamond Sutra master, and he was traveling south from the north because he heard that in the south there are monks who don't study the Diamond Sutra and they still claim to get enlightenment. And as Dongsan was traveling south, he was already in the quote-unquote Zen area, and he was very hungry. And he went into an inn And in this inn, there was an old woman as the owner. And she respectfully greeted the monk and says, "Oh, great monk, where are you from?" "I'm from the north. And may I ask your name?" "My name is Doksan. I am the Diamond Sutra master of the north, this and this temple. I heard that these monks in the south do not study the Diamond Sutra, so I came to hit them and teach them the correct way." So then the woman says, "Ah, wonderful, what an honor. And can I ask you just one question of the Diamond Sutra?" "Sure, no problem. But if I ask that question and you cannot answer, I cannot give you lunch." "What? I can answer any kind of question from the Diamond Sutra. I'm Diamond Sutra master," Doksan said. "So, Venerable Sir, the Diamond Sutra says that past mind cannot get enlightenment, present mind cannot get enlightenment, future mind cannot get enlightenment. So with what kind of mind will you be eating lunch today?" So Doksan heard that and completely got stuck. He froze, became white, and then red. And he says, "Well, where is the nearest Zen temple here?" So he went to Yakshan Zen master's place. They talked for a long time. And near midnight, when it was really dark, he was given a small candle to find his way. It was really, really, really dark outside. So as he opens up the gate of the Zen master's room where they finished having tea, he says, wow, it's really dark. So thank you for this little candle. With this light, I'll find my way. And then that moment, Yakshan blew out the candle in his hand. When Doksan experienced that, he got enlightenment. And next day, he just threw all his sutra copies and commentaries on the temple yard, burned them, and danced with joy and says, "From now on, I believe all the teachings of the great Zen masters." And he himself became a Zen master. Anytime they asked him a question, he just, boom, hit the questioner. Now, that's not going to happen to anyone here. But that gives you an idea how far reality is from the body of the teaching. Okay? So that's why we are in the stage when we give you verbal teaching, a discursive line of thoughts. It's linear. It's as imperfect as it could be. But if you choose the path of realization, you will have your own experience. Then no circles, no layers, no past, no present, no future. So welcome to the club. More questions?
How do you not describe the no mind? Okay,
Too smart. Very smart.
Are you kidding? Is it a joke?
Already understood. So when the Buddha was giving this question to many of his disciples, what is not two? And many Buddhas, many Bodhisattvas, many Arahants, they were giving wonderful answers, what is not two. And they said, good and bad are not two. I and no I are not two. High and low, not two. Life and death, not two. But finally, it came to Manjushri. And Manjushri said, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, enlightenment and suffering, not two. So actually that's like a strong Mahayana statement. When it came to Vimalakirti, the great lay practitioner, he was asked, what is not two? And he gave just this answer. And that was the deepest possible. So the Buddha rejoiced. It's the same point as she asked. How do you describe no mind? No mind means not two, no thinking, no appearance, no disappearance. If I make any move, if I open my mouth, it's a mistake. Even hitting with the stick is a mistake. Okay? So we have a keen-eyed mother in the audience. Just teach your daughter all these goodies when it's time for her to understand that. Okay? More questions?
Hi.
Good. More questions? any kind of question, no problem. Yes?
You say it's not important to separate yourself from this normal life for meditation and this development. Why do you do so?
We don't separate ourselves. We appoint a place for meditation, that's our temple, which we are building and partly have built. We choose a lifestyle which is beneficial for us and other people as well. So appointing a place and a schedule and a specific activity does not mean that we are cutting ourselves off. We throw away the keys and we lock the doors. But we display a focus on the mind rather than on externalities, mostly what people want to get in their lives. We don't judge that, but we offer an alternative because as you look around, we have more and more frustrated, stressed, and disoriented people. They don't know what to do. And what we do is we offer an alternative that if they want to focus really inside, if they want to find out and explore what they truly are, and what our human situation is, what our direction could be, not what should be, but could be in this lifetime, they're welcome. So it's not a separation. It's a dedicated focus to the mind and to our practice, which for us became a fully involved lifestyle. With yours, it doesn't have to be. Again, keep your hair, keep your clothing, everything as you are, but put a little quality into it. That's why we suggest every morning and every evening, meditate a little bit. Whether it's just 20 minutes each time or more, it's completely up to you. But if you wash your clothes in your washing machine and it spins around, around, and around, why don't you wash your mind in your own meditation washing machine? No one should do that for you. No one can do that for you. You should do that for yourself. If your mind is clear, you make less mistakes, you make better decisions, you improve the quality of life, not just for yourself, but for other beings as well. And that is the source of happiness, not some entertainment. Keep watching TV, that's no problem. But you know that it's not the true source of your happiness. It entertains you. Sufficiently or not, it's yours to see. Okay? Changing the channel doesn't help. Okay.
It says no mistakes, but we make some.
Less mistakes. You will still make mistakes, but less than before. Because if you perceive, then if you have seen a mistake, you will not deliberately make that mistake again. But if you don't see the mistake, then that karma which made the mistake controls you. Yes?
When you came in, I heard you were talking to each other in Hungarian. But in what language do you think and in what language do you meditate?
Meditation doesn't take a language. So meditation has no language. And you want to know my thought secrets? Wow. Sometimes I think in Hungarian, sometimes in English, sometimes in Korean. Because when you're in Korea and you speak the language there, then you also form your internal thoughts sometimes in Korean. It doesn't matter how you think, what language you're thinking. I mean, it sounds exotic. How many languages can the mind speak? It can speak infinite languages. But let me tell you a story. Most of you know Spinoza, this philosopher. So he lived over 150 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And he was introduced to a polyglot. A polyglot is a person who speaks quite a lot of languages, not the usual amount, but a lot. And this polyglot appeared to be conversant in 10 languages. And they talked, and after half an hour, Spinoza dismissed the polyglot with some polite remarks. And the friends of the philosopher just asked, what happened? We expected that you guys would converse for a long time. This seems to be an interesting polyglot, so why so short? And then Spinoza said, yeah, this man speaks 10 languages, but he speaks garbage in all of them. I don't think I have to explain further.
Okay. Köszönöm.
Szívesen. Wow, he knows something. More questions? Many of you have it just on the tip of your tongue. Don't hold yourself back.
Do you think there's any hope for world leaders who've spent so much time and energy getting to this, having all this material power and wealth and influence?
Yeah, there is. There is, because the mind does not depend on the speed of material change. In other words, your mind can realize your karma, your direction, your mistakes and your merits far faster than material cause and effect. There is some hope. I mean, hope dies last. But what can they achieve in the time frame that we have? We have infinite amount of time, but cause and effect are kind of speeding up. And that's what creates a sense of urgency or even a sense of danger in a lot of people. Some people say the world is going to end. Well, I have bad news, it's not going to end. If it could end, we would just have to wait. But we did not begin this world. We came here. So we cannot end, we can only depart. So what is actually happening, that we have a lot more human beings than 200 years ago, in fact 6 times more than 200 years ago, and 3 times more than 100 years ago. So the human quantity has increased dramatically, and the human quality has not increased almost at all. This planet is not too small for 6.7 billion people, but with the current mindset, with the current mind quality, it is too small. And the leader's job would be really to become clear inside and to have enough wisdom and compassion to lead people towards a more quality-oriented life and more quality-oriented mind, both. This is not happening. What is happening is more quantity-oriented. I think this is pretty international. How much you have on your bank account, how many private jets you own, or cars, SUVs, it's quantity, quantity, and quantity. This is killing us. It's killing Mother Earth. It's disintegrating human societies. In a matter of 2-3 decades, in fact, the last 10 years, just if you look at that, it has become significantly worse because some leaders really made unawakened decisions. In other words, if you follow anger and desire out of your own ignorance, then things can get pretty tight very quickly. If you have a car, you can stop it within 30 meters if your brakes are good and you're not going too fast. If you have a bus at the same speed, it takes 2-3 times the same braking distance than the car. And if you have a whole train, it's a kilometer. And if you have a tanker, it's sometimes 2.5, 3.5 kilometers until it comes to a full stop. Human society is like that right now. When you had tribes, you could change the mindset or the direction of that tribe with one command. From now on, we go north and not south. And all the horses turned, that's it. You wanted to change societies later that had millions of people, it took decades. Now we would have to change the mindset of many, many, many leaders who are making really unenlightened decisions, and there's more anger, more desire, more ignorance, and more suffering in the wake of these decisions. But we have 6.7 billion people. It's a lot. So we would really have to sit down and talk things over like in a tribe. They didn't have courts or tribunals in the Aboriginals. They sat down and they sat under a tree. If necessary, for 2-3 days they were talking about one issue. This world has become very complex, accelerated, And we have such inertia in our financial, political, social processes that it's almost impossible to change their direction. There's too much energy in them, and their direction is also very determined. What the systems, these high-class scientific systems, have brought to us is that very few people can control a very large amount of people. Very few processes are in control of a very large amount of material, social, political processes. You press a button, and 100 million people get your SMS. You press another button, and 500 million see you on a community site. It's unprecedented. Our minds are not prepared for this, let alone the leader's mind. And that's why everybody in any responsible position, whether you are responsible for a flesh and blood family of 3, 6, 8, 10 people, or an institution, or a country, or a city, or a continent, in proportion with your responsibility, you would have to increase your own clarity. And we do not see that happening. There is hope. There's always hope. But where this thing is leading us in the short term and in the long term, we have to see very clearly. So if we do not have natural-born communities, people who can trust each other, share resources with each other, help each other genuinely and selflessly, not based on some profit. If we don't have these communities in our neighborhood, then in times of crises, we suffer more than we would have to. So it's up to us how we change this. And eventually we should not depend on any leader's mind, although their decisions deeply affect us, especially in this systematic and interrelated world. But our primary job is our own minds, our own life, our own path. And if we take care of that, then chances are that it will have a positive influence, and how long that takes, it's almost none of our concern. So take the internal approach rather than trying to change those who don't listen to you. And your question is very good. It's very valid. It comes out of a genuine human concern, which I share with you. That is why I'm answering at length. But our job can start and should start with ourselves. And if by some miracle it has an impact on the upper layers of society, the higher echelons, as they say, if they care to listen, then we do stand a chance. Other than that, we are up to a rough ride in the next couple of years and decades. And I don't have to tell you the worst case scenarios. Just open your television and see what's going on. Okay? I think that's a clear enough motivation for our own practice. More questions?
What would you do if you would die right now, this second? Okay, 2 seconds before dying.
All right. More questions? About what?
About the gates. I don't know how many gates have you learned. Have you learned 12 gates or 10?
What gate?
Okay. I saw this book about Zen Buddhism, and there was like
That's the problem. You read the Zen Buddhist book and you have all these gates in your mind.
Now I have a friend also who has like an interest in the gates.
You see what friends can do to you? Terrible.
Terrible. All right.
There is only one gate. The gate of no thinking. You enter that gate, all the other gates open. You do not enter this gate, you keep thinking, 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 and running around like a dog chasing its own tail. Only one gate. The rest is just paraphernalia. Or skillful means, whichever you choose.
I think there's not any gate. Like there's not one gate or the rest gates
So why do you?
Just to make sure that you haven't learned that other ways.
I think we have quite a lot of spice in today's Dharma talk. More questions? Any kind of questions? Salty, peppery, any other kinds?
Politically not correct questions. Political questions. So, talking about the processes in the world right now, what is your opinion? What happens right now in Islamic world? Because Western people cannot understand. They are just surprised what is going on in North Africa, other Arabic states. So,
well, I think we can safely say that we only see the orchestra, we don't see the conductor. It's pretty much in unison. You know avviso? Avviso is an Italian word for beginning. So when the conductor has a staff in his hand, this first move, and then everybody in the orchestra says, da-da-da-da, okay? That's the avviso. We don't know who did the avviso, but it's pretty much in sync what's happening there. What's happening in the North African and Middle Eastern Islamic world right now is not spreading through Facebook or Twitter. There's at least a couple of conductors who are in sync. What is a problem is that we really don't know why this is happening right now or what the motivation is. But I'm very skeptical about any positive outcome. Why? Because we have seen, at least in Europe, a bunch of revolutions that just brought bloodshed and suffering and no meaningful change. In fact, all the revolutions, if you look at it, are like that. So, why not be radical inside? Why couldn't we radically evolve mentally rather than having a material type of revolution externally, which is really just destruction? It doesn't help anything, it doesn't help anybody because the mind doesn't change. I mean, the French Revolution is a really great example of that, you know. They started with a king and they ended up with a dictator. 15 years passed, millions of people died. Kaboom. Russia, same thing. They started with a Tsar and they ended up with the first secretary of the Communist Party. He terminated as many people as the Second World War. I don't have to explain that here. We share the same karma of being a small country next to a big empire. So, we don't know why, we don't know what exactly is in the background, but it serves some interests. This is my opinion. I'm not a subscriber to conspiracy theories, but I'm not stupid either. It's a luxury. I cannot afford it. So, soon. The question is, do you really see the meaning of this? Do we really see how it can motivate us to lead a different life? Does it have any teaching value for us? If not, then we have just watched the news and we turn the page and we watch something else. Then we turn to the Japanese disaster. But if you want to use all these external news or externalities and see the teaching value in it, and mostly what you see outside teaches you one thing: I don't want to go this way. It's up to me. I don't want to create this. I don't want to go like this. If I'm responsible for a country, I don't want to turn the country into this fate. If that's something you can distill for yourself as wisdom, then it was already worth watching the news. More questions?
Could you stop some more days in Tallinn? Tallinn is the capital of culture of Europe, just to teach.
I very much appreciate your kindness, and please be sure we come again upon your invitation. Though at this time our schedule does not allow us to stop for a longer time, although we feel very motivated. both in Tartu and here in Tallinn, we meet wonderful audience who have very good questions and very fixed eyes on the speakers. And that's very good. It shows your attention. So, anytime when the Institute feels like, and we can put it into our own schedule, we'll be happy to teach more and show you the practical aspects of meditation. And that is something which is not a promise, it's a prospect. It's an outlook for the future which we can realize if there's mutual intention. But tomorrow morning we are going to Vilnius and Kaunas to finish our roaming in the 3 Baltic states. And I hope that within the foreseeable future we can repeat that again. Okay? More questions?
I have a question that comes from my neighbor. She's an editor and teacher in Estonia, but she hesitates to ask herself.
Okay.
So I'm her voice, and perhaps it's appropriate to ask this time from your brother.
Absolutely. Feel free to ask him any questions.
Could you explain what's the main difference between Korean Buddhism and Tibetan? or Zen Buddhism and Tibetan mind? Because we are familiar with Tibetan teaching.
Yes, if you read about them and if you think about them, if you get the information about them, they are pretty much different. If you sit down and do the practice, they are the same.
We would like to hear your perspective. We can read, but you can probably just tell us very shortly and very clearly what is the difference.
Well, what is the difference? To tell the truth, I don't know. I wasn't really interested in Tibetan Buddhism, and I haven't studied that so far. About Korean Buddhism, of course I can tell things, but the main point is when you get the cushion, you sit down and start your meditation, there is no difference.
So all is one again.
When you sit down and do your meditation, there's no one, and there's also no two. So this question doesn't even come up.
Then there's no question. Thank you.
Then there's no answer.
Very Zen.
Very good. Wonderful. More questions?
Okay, maybe one little bit more academic question about historic background. You said that Korean Sun is a combination from Buddhism, Taoism, and maybe Confucianism too.
Yeah.
How it all put together? What parts Korean Buddhism chose from each teaching?
Very good question. You know, Confucianism has very strict rules about society. How you are supposed to relate to your spouse, to your boss, to your children. Everything's predefined. It's not just manners, it's also the mind. What you're supposed to reflect as emotions or cognition, how you're supposed to think about these people who are related to you. And for that to work, you have to always perceive your correct situation, correct relationship, correct function. So what kind of situation you are in right now? Like where you are sitting in the room. Whether you have chairs before you or also a table. Whether you are the audience or you are the speaker. That's your situation. In this case, it's very easy to define. But many times in life, it's not. So then Confucianism helps you because it has these preset categories and preset forms. Correct situation, correct relationship, correct function. But since it's preset and predefined, it not only gives you guidance, but it has limitations also. It can think only in terms of forms and predefined relationships. If something is outside of the book, they cannot improvise. Improvisation is difficult. And that's why Confucianist education is exhausted largely by repetition. repeat the analects, repeat the sutras, repeat what your father and mother taught you, and that's all you need. It's not bad, it's a necessary foundation, but it's insufficient. It doesn't bring out your creative potential. So the key sentence for Confucianism is correct situation, correct relationship, correct function. Next is Taoism. Taoism is about nature, and also about your true nature, and the path that you take. So they have a way to become one with nature. It's very mysterious in a way. Taoist techniques are not explicit. You have to find a hermit up in the mountain and then practice with that hermit. And then what becomes yours is actually transmitted to a select few disciples. So Taoist practice is becoming one nature, one with nature, and really not addressing the crowds or not coming back to society. So by Taoist terms, if you left, you're gone forever. You come back only for the next disciples or just to beg for food, and that's it. It's very similar to the Theravada practice, the old Theravada practice, not the current one. So become one with nature and lead a solitary life. That's Taoist practice. And I'm not talking about ritual Taoism, which is in big temples and in cities, and it's a totally different development of Lao Tzu's teaching. I'm talking about the Taoist meditation practice. But nature is very important because just like in Confucianism, there are no supreme entities, there are no gods, there are no supernatural things. You just become one with nature and you return to your true nature. And that's the key sentence for Taoism. Become one with nature, return to your true nature. Buddhism has another key sentence, which is wake up, attain awakening, and help all beings. So that addresses you. That addresses the ordinary people who are in cities, who are leading quote-unquote ordinary or lay life. And the aim of Buddhist practitioners is to really realize and attain our true substance, as I have talked about it recently, and bring that to society. And the idea is not a solitary transmission, but an enlightened society which can lead together a life out of suffering, or with less mistakes, with less dualities. So if you put the three together, correct situation, relationship, and function, attain nature, attain your true nature, and attain awakening and help all beings, this is a pretty powerful combination. It gives you everything you need. Of course, you may want more things, more aspects, more techniques, but this is plenty. So we are lucky that Korean Buddhism, and especially as it came to the West and gained its form here, it is really proportionate. It's balanced. The most visible part in Korean Buddhism, funnily enough, is not Buddhism itself, but it's the Confucianist form. And then there is the kind of Buddhist Mahayana, emotional content inside, which is really emotional, compassionate, outgoing. And then there's the ascetic practice when people go for 100 days or for a year and they lock themselves in a hermitage or in a hut. And that's more or less the Taoist aspect or the earlier Buddhist aspect. And this is why it could survive. Again, variety and diversification is the key to survival. If you are just a monochrome culture and you don't have inroads into the larger world, then one big problem can terminate you or block your way. And that's what happens when you believe in only one thing or one entity, and that one thing or one entity is suddenly taken from you. Then you are spiritually dead. So that's why it's important to see that the combination of these three great traditions is still very vibrant, it still exists, and it practices and teaches and constructs and everything to address the current world, to address this moment, to address you. Because we never stop having questions, only when our time is up, and it's not up yet. Okay. So I feel very fortunate that I got near Korean tradition, and they are not kind of persuading you to be there. You have to make effort to be there. You have to invest a lot of energy. You have to devote yourself completely and not expecting anything in return, but rather focus on your own development inside. And when it's time for somebody to notice that or support that, then it happens. And before that, you just do not exist. And it's fine that way. The little seed does not complain that it's in the dark of the ground or the soil, because when the time comes in spring, it comes out, it sprouts, and it brings fruition. More questions? Some people are busy writing. What is so important? So, last few questions. We have some more time, and then everybody can go home and enjoy an evening meal in the company of their beloved in your family.
You said that you offer people opportunity or possibility to come and join you. Do you think that ordinary people like us would do more good by living with others or following your example? It doesn't have to be Buddhist monastery. I just came from an island where people are trying to create community like this, like you described, and it's very, very similar to all these ideas. Even this that we don't invite people, they have to make effort to find us and become one with us, to understand the thing of this community, all these ideas. And this is not a new community. It has been it has been sufficient for a long time. So this, when you explained about the circle, and when you told about this, that we should go out and help the other ones, what do you think for ordinary people? It's more advisable to stay with families, to stay with community where they live, where they chose to live, or to find sort of solitude within community or a monastery or else.
So look.
Affects world better.
See, if you want to make decisions, then you also need samples of reality for that. So if you're interested in monastic life for any reason, take a trip and see how that monastery works, which you have in your focus. But what I really recommend is pretty much along the same lines when she asked about meditation, how we begin meditating, is that where do you feel genuine? Where do you feel you really belong? And where do you feel that your questions can be genuinely answered? Sometimes these two are not the same. That's why I left Europe. For me, in my situation, in my life, there was no sufficient answer to my questions and no sufficient solutions to my problems. And I didn't rest until I have found it. And when I have found it, I brought it back here. And this is something I genuinely and sincerely recommend to everybody. Find a place where you can belong, and find a place where your deepest questions can be answered sufficiently. These two together is your true home. One is your body home, your karmic home, and the other is your spiritual home. So the spiritual home is very important. The Buddha did not find his spiritual home in the palace. So he left his karma, he left his kingdom, he left everything and chose the homeless life to find his answers. But what he did after finding the answers is that he brought it back to the kingdom where he started from. His father never wanted to hear about him again. Never. But his ex-wife and his son, they joined the order. You know that. So what I mean is, again, for the third time today, don't cut your hair, don't change your clothing, but take the trip outside of yourself, of your own concept of ego, or I, my, me. Lose your attachments, and take the trip where you find the answers for your questions, and bring whatever wisdom you have found back. So that can enrich your original community, that can transform the community to a direction which is like spiritual evolution. Because probably we can agree that whether it's an island, or a city, or any place on earth where a community exists, without a spiritual fiber, without a spiritual guideline, it cannot exist at all. Or it is reduced just to very, very low-class self-interests, and they soon clash. So there has to be something which guides people spiritually, and also someone or some people. And without the spiritual guidance, the minds cannot harmonize. Without actual practice, the minds cannot tune together. Sometimes it's working together, having music together, dancing together, or crying together. But in a monastic community, it's also sitting together in silence, really making an effort to attain this mind which is beyond thinking, beyond life and death. So you can create a community along many, many guidelines, and you can evolve spiritually to many directions. But where do you really feel genuinely belonging, and where is your spiritual desire satisfied? Together, if you have that, then you can see cause and effect very clearly, and you can also see whether it helps this world or not, because that's the third step. Okay? So, if you feel at home with your sense of community, then you should see what it does to the rest of the world. And if the third question is also a check mark, then be there. Be there. Sometimes people feel great in an army, and they love their weapons, and they love the military doctrine, and they really are fond of their friends in the military. And they also see the necessity. They are going into countries and they help spread democracy and all these things. So they believe what they are told. If you make one more step, and this is a pretty big step, and you choose to see it from a different angle, then you see what you are doing actually. And you can no longer do it. That's how many soldiers became monks a long time ago in China. They said, no more. Enough. Whatever it was, I did it in good faith, but with my current mindset, I cannot continue this anymore. Enough. Okay? So I think if you are part of a community effort, then see these three things very clearly. Do you belong there with your karma? Do you have genuine relationship to those people who are there? Do you have correct, or for you, satisfying answers to your spiritual questions? Can you agree to that? And the third is, do you agree with the effect that this community has on the world together with you? And if these three are okay, then you are in the right place. Last question, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to that point.
Is love a chemical reaction or illusion?
Say it again loud, please.
Is love chemical reaction or illusion?
Neither. Don't reduce love into chemical reaction or illusion. It's one of the most sacred emotions on earth. In fact, the only energy which is valid. Without loving kindness, we couldn't even live. And without love, human beings wouldn't reproduce. So, just ask yourself this question, what is love? And see what appears in your heart. You give this answer the best.
This is my question.
First.
For myself also.
So at first you have to ask yourself, but when you have a clear emotional footing and you feel this, in your heart, then there has to be somebody you share this with. Either you can share it on kind of the everyday level and you have a husband or a boyfriend, or you may not choose to do that and you share it with everybody non-physically, because you have only one body. If you choose the physical relationship, soon it becomes a commitment, one to one. And that is correct that way. We call that marriage or a committed relationship. But if you choose the non-physical way, then your love is extended to all beings, and it has to. The one-on-one relationship does not rule that out, yet your primary focus is the other person, your significant other in your life, and then soon the children that you have. If you choose the non-flesh and blood family, then your love does not take physical form. It is addressing all beings. It is permeating the whole world. And that's another form which some of us have experienced, some of us have not. But you can start from either end. You can start from the physical or from the pure mental. Yet without this love, we cannot live. So, do not reduce that into anything. I know your question was rather a starter than a kind of conclusive question, and that's very good. It's just as important as finding out what we truly are. Because out of this oneness, out of this experience of sharing the same substance, naturally comes love and compassion, and also wisdom. If love becomes attachment, then light turns into dark. Freedom turns into jail. Commitment turns into something really uncomfortable, like a personal prison, and then you don't want to go home. You don't want to be there. You don't want to continue that karma which has evolved into something that you no longer feel as nourishing, supporting, energizing, but as something that takes your energy, takes your freedom, takes everything that you have given. So the biggest job is not to see how we fall in love or how we develop this if it's not so personal, but how we keep it. Keep it fresh, keep it clear, and never lose your wisdom, even in the most loving state. And by now you know that this wisdom is not thinking. This wisdom is clear insight. This wisdom is clarity, like in a mirror, but this mirror is not cold glass. This mirror is our minds. This mirror is our heart. So I hope that all of us find our true way, and if we do that, then we can genuinely help each other in this whole world. And probably this is the quality that we are in most need of now. It has always been necessary throughout human history, but at this point in time, in the current state we are in, we need it as a person. Families need it, groups, societies, temples, schools, institutes, they all need that. So why don't we develop that? Why don't we attain that? It's way within our potential to become clear, compassionate, and wise. It's up to us how we want to proceed. Thank you for your attention.